Okay, hi everyone. This is Chantal Unfug, the Director of the Division of Local Government in DOLA. Welcome to our 88th Local Government Coordination Call. Just to remind everybody, we started this call during the pandemic and used it as a touch point, a regular touch point for all of you into the state. And we brought you the most up-to-date information and the resources that you might need to really support your recovery. And we all decided to continue this because it became a really valuable moment to be sharing information back and forth. So I just want to thank all of you. The most important thing that I want to announce with the Executive Director's Office is we have welcomed Maria de Cambra, and she is our new Executive Director, and she is on the phone and wanting to say hi to everybody. So I'll turn it over to you, Maria.
Thank you, Chantal. And I just want to say I'm so excited to be here in today's call and just to, learn a little bit about, any feedback or, updates that you might have that we should be aware of. My heart is with local government. I was the mayor pro tem of the city of Westminster before I joined Governor Polis's administration. So I couldn't be more excited to be working at the Department of Local Affairs. And I look forward as I get across the state in the new year to meeting all of you and learning more about the great work that you're doing in the community and how the Department of Local Affairs can continue to be an even better partner to our local government. So thank you all so much for joining the call, and I'll turn it over back to Chantal.
Thank you, Maria. And of course, with that, also a moment just to thank Rick Garcia for all of his support during these calls the last couple of years. We're excited to move forward. So I'm going to jump in with the Executive Director's announcement, specifically something from the State Demography Office. And just to remind you, we'll be putting things in the chat so you have it in writing and you can cut and paste. So the State Demography Office is working on a project collecting residential building permits, demolitions, and COs from local governments to be used in the creation of an annual population and housing unit estimates. So we'll put the contact Nancy Gideon's email in the chat if you have any questions, but this is really going to be helpful for you as you're thinking about moving forward with your housing planning, your needs assessments, and your land use work and your comp plan, all driving towards affordability and your strategic growth in your communities. That's going to be a super resource for you. From the Division of Housing, they specifically wanted us to talk about the temporary rental assistance grant. And they are implementing this $30 million program from the special session that just happened. The anticipated launch is January 31st. And so our timeline is request for applications opened in the end of November until December 18th, which was 2 days ago. And then we're going to spend the next few weeks reviewing and making the award decisions and then moving forward to contracting. So I know they've been working really hard on that. If you have a question, again, we'll put some contacts into the chat. Just a quick summary of the bill. The bill authorized DOH to contract with Colorado-based nonprofits to award grants to 80% of the area median income, the AMI, to residential tenants, including mobile homeowners that are at risk of eviction. And so this is a critical program at the moment, as I know we all are still recovering from the impacts of COVID, and we have seen a potential uptick in the risk of eviction again. So from the Division of Local Government side, we as well are working to roll out work from the special session. We have been offering office hours regarding budget deadlines and the backfill process that we are responsible for figuring out. We will put those office hours back in the chat in case you haven't had a chance to get on one. And if we need to continue doing office hours, we are more than happy to keep them going in this next month or two. We absolutely want to make sure you feel comfortable with the data and information that you need to make the decisions about your budgeting. We're going to put the link in the chat as well. Also, a great success, our Community Development Office has made the Strong Communities Planning Grants Awards. We just want to congratulate Archuleta, El Paso, Gilpin, Larimer counties, as well as Aspen, Colorado Springs, Crested Butte, Gunnison, Hudson, and Rifle. So well done. They also have just reviewed all of the letters of intent for the infrastructure side of Strong Communities. Over $165 million was requested in LOIs. And so we're now working with 19 local governments to apply for the full grant. And that NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability, is going to open soon. So DLG also runs the local planning capacity grant program from Prop 123, and we're really excited about doing that because as we are going through all of these changes, so many local governments came to us and said, we're struggling with having the capacity to move forward and how can we help? And now we have the resources to give to you to help. And we received 34 letters of intent for this first time funding at about 3.5 million, and 31 of the 34 were invited to apply. The others we're going to be working with to help you get across the finish line. So please think about that in the next round in the spring of 2024. Conservation Trust Fund, also keep an eye on that. We made our quarterly distribution of about $24 million. And a reminder that comes from the lottery proceeds. If you're new to this, and it has specific uses, but the GOCO money is handled separately, and we handle the Conservation Trust Fund for parks, recreation, conservation, etc. Lastly, for the division, the Community Development Block Grant Public Facilities Notice of Funding is up in the portal. Please call us if you think you might have a project that fits those requirements. The applications will be due February 23rd. And always, please talk to your regional manager before you apply. They're very, very helpful at making sure your application is competitive and aligned with the program, and you have the capacity to handle the federal program. So 2 last things, and then I will turn it back over to Shale because we have great guest speakers. Don't forget to register for the virtual Colorado Resiliency Summit. That's on January 25th. The theme is Stories of Resilience, Uniting for Climate Adaptation. We're really excited to host Ernest House, who probably a lot of you know, who is the Senior Policy Director at the Center of Tribal and Indigenous Engagement at Keystone Policy Center. And then we have our Pathways to Recovery and Resiliency Funding webinar that will be introduced by Shale. And then the topic is IIJA Road and Bridge Funding, which I know I was at CCI and there were lots and lots of questions about this. So thanks everybody again for coming. We're putting stuff in the chat. Please ask your questions and off you go, Shale.
Great, thank you, Chantal. I'm actually going to turn it over to Alyssa Dinberg from the State Recovery Team in the Governor's Office to give you some updates on what's going on with funding navigation and everything else. So, Alyssa, and I will pull up some slides for Alyssa as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Shale. I have 2 very quick updates. The first one, Shale, you actually don't need to pull them up. You can just put the link in the chat if you want.
Oh, okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, it's up to you though. We have this past month, DOLA partnered with the Office of the State Controller to host 2 office hours for local governments on the ARPA Treasury reporting. We know that a couple of our local governments across the state are struggling with the Treasury portal and getting your reports submitted. So the Office of the State Controller has a really helpful presentation that they've put together that can help guide you all through some of the issues that you might be having. They are planning on doing 2 more office hours before your next report is due. So if that is something that you are interested in, DOLA will make sure that that information is included in an upcoming webinar, and we will also announce it in an upcoming our upcoming webinar right before that happens. I believe that it's going to be in April, but that could change. We don't have dates solidified yet. And then the next update I have, which is really exciting, we're really excited to announce that our IIJA and IRA grant funding program, or grant writing and technical assistance program, has been announced. It is available. We have heard that many of you are having issues with capacity to be able to write grants and submit IIJA and IRA applications. And so we have brought on 2 consulting firms that will be able to assist local governments. That application is live. Please note that this program is for communities that do not have the capacity to either write grants themselves or the funding to be able to hire their own grant writers. There is an application. You're welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. If you are looking for project development support, please make sure you're reaching out to your regional manager as well as your regional grant navigator. They are more than happy to help you with project development. I think that is all I have. Shale has put a link to both of those items that I mentioned in the chat, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the end.
Great, thank you so much, Alyssa. So now we can go ahead and move into our Pathways to Recovery and Resiliency Funding webinar series. So as I pull up the slides, as a reminder, this program is really to help break down state and local funding opportunities to better help local governments and community partners navigate and access potential solutions for any challenges that they might be facing. So we do this series in collaboration with several of our other state agency partners. So today we are going to be discussing IIJA road and bridge funding. And so we have Bethany Nicholas, who is joining us from the Colorado Department of Transportation to discuss that today. So I will share my screen here, and Bethany, you can go ahead and take it away.
Great, thank you. Thank you for inviting us and having us. I appreciate it. I'm happy to present to you today. My name is Bethany Nicholas. I'm the recovery officer for the Department of Transportation. So I was asked today to talk about road and bridge funding opportunities. I do have a couple of staff along with me today who will be on hand after the presentation to help me answer questions. A couple of experts. I have Eric Ehrbar, who is the CDOT Project Budget Director, and also Hannah Reed, who is our fantastic grant writer for CDOT. So hopefully with all of our knowledge, we'll be able to kind of address any questions you have after the presentation. So I kind of have taken the perspective of interpreting road and bridge more broadly as kind of transportation infrastructure. So I've included actually a little bit of everything that would be relevant when it comes to transportation that I thought you all might be interested in. Hopefully it's not too overwhelming. So all in all, I plan to cover about 22 different grant programs. And I just picked the ones that I thought would be most pertinent and interesting. I have included a lot of links to resources at the end, which should give you information, more detailed information on the ones that you're interested in, and also ones that I wasn't able to include in this slide deck because there are so many out there. So basically, I've broken the grants down into 3 categories. Federal discretionary grant programs, which you can see here, is the first table I was going to go through. And then after this, I have CDOT grant programs, and I've broken that into 2. So CDOT federal and CDOT state funded grant programs. And I did that. I thought it was kind of helpful to split them apart just because, of course, federal grants have a little higher bar when it comes to compliance and reporting, or maybe a lot higher. Although don't underestimate the amount of administrative work that's involved with receiving a CDOT grant. They're all kind of a lot of administrative work, right? So anyway, with that kind of context, I'll go ahead and get started. So the first one I'm going to cover here is major federal discretionary grant programs. So if you want to stay on that last table slide, that'll work for me. I can kind of talk about this a little bit. So these are the programs run by the federal government. So Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, or Federal Transit Administration, FTA. I did include a column there that lets you know which federal agency is administering the grant program. And at the end of the slide deck, I have a section that kind of shares contact information so you know where to go to get some help on these particular items. So I'm going to walk through a few of these in more detail, so I won't necessarily talk through them each individually here, but just giving you an idea, this table is meant to provide you a summary so you can see it all in one place. So the left column there, it says program, obviously the program name, and there's a hyperlink where you can go and get more information, and this slide deck should be shared after this presentation, so you'll have that. And then I did give some estimates as to sort of the size of the program. These are definitely swag dollar amounts. They're just to give you a general idea of how much money is out there in each of these different programs. A short little description so you have an idea. I think when it comes to discretionary grants, typically we find that the best approach is to start with your project and work from there. So if you have a particular project in mind that's prioritized that you're really wanting to find funding for, it's nice to kind of read through and identify grants that you think that will fit kind of the qualifications, and work that way rather than the other way around, looking at the grant and trying to find projects. So hopefully a short little description helps you do that. And then the next notice of funding opportunity, the far right column, you can see like the first maybe 5 of these have NOFOs coming out relatively soon. So those first few, I'm going to focus on those in the slides to come. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So I was going to talk about the RAISE grant, Rebuilding America's Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. You'll find, of course, that all of these federal grants have an acronym that seems to be quite complex for some reason. But anyway, the program purpose here is just to provide capital investments in surface transportation that will have a significant local or regional impact. So it's more or less a kind of a catch-all eligibility. It really applies to roads, bridges, transit, planning, capital. They do want to align these with equity, community, and sustainability priorities. I think we have had quite a bit of luck in the state of Colorado with getting some of these RAISE grants. So this is a great opportunity. It does have a standard 80-20 match, which is somewhat flexible for rural, historically disadvantaged communities, and or areas of persistent poverty. So, when you read the NOFO, take a look at that as far as match requirements. And then BCAs, those are benefit cost analysis. Those are typically required for all capital construction projects on RAISE grants. Next slide, please. SS4A is Safe Streets and Roads for All. This is a grant program that's actually we will apply directly to FHWA, and they are overseeing and working with locals directly on executing these grants. So this program is for the development of a comprehensive safety action plan that identifies the most significant roadway safety concerns in a community and the implementation of projects and strategies to address roadway safety issues. It is for locals only, so the state cannot apply, which is great because then you're not put in a position of competing with the state on applications. But we can support applications. So, please reach out to your CDOT contacts in your region, and we can work with you to kind of provide letters of support. The objectives must align with the Zero Deaths Initiative. This program has at least 200 million available annually, up to 6 billion available nationally through the federal fiscal year 26. And this program has 2 categories of funding, action plan development, and then also implementation grants. But you do need to have a qualifying action plan in place to apply for the implementation funding. Next slide. Okay, the next grant is called Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods. It's kind of unique. It's really for projects that improve access. So to daily destinations such as jobs, education, healthcare, food, etc. They want to foster equitable development and restoration and reconnect communities by removing, retrofitting, or mitigating existing transportation facilities that create barriers. So, if there's a large roadway or infrastructure that's in place that has kind of split a community apart, this is a great grant to apply for. They are prioritizing projects that benefit disadvantaged communities. And then it does encourage community advisory boards and other community-centered project development strategies. And there's no award max restriction on capital projects. So, and then we listed just a couple examples at the bottom. For example, a pedestrian bridge over an interstate, or potentially expanding affordable public transit services. Those are good projects for this particular grant. Next slide. This grant, like I said, these are all coming out right now, so it's very timely. Low or no emissions vehicles, so grants for buses and bus facilities. This is often referred to as 5339, so I just put that in there in case it's a good reference to know. So this low or no emission competitive grant program provides funding for purchasing or leasing zero emission or low emission transit buses, and also acquiring, constructing, or leasing the facilities. So with these grants, we actually, CASTA and FHU Consulting actually coordinate applications with local agencies. So that's your best way to kind of coordinate on putting in an application for these grants. We'll review the application and submit it under our EI and the grants.gov profile, but it's just kind of unique the way this particular application process works. And again, here we just provided a couple examples. So Archuleta County Mountain Express Low E-Fleet and Bus Facility Project was a recent project that got this grant, and then the Avon Transit Diesel Bus Replacement also got this grant, just as far as examples. Awesome, thank you. Okay, the Wildlife Crossings Program. This pilot program has the goal of reducing wildlife vehicle collisions, WVCs, and then also just improving habitat connectivity for terrestrial and aquatic species. I have a picture there of a nice wildlife bridge. So this grant provides funding for not only construction, but also non-construction projects. So anything that reduces wildlife vehicle collisions and improves the connectivity of the habitat connectivity would be a good candidate for this project. So I'm not sure when the next NOFO is coming out, but you might want to, if you're interested in this one, kind of stay tuned and into when that will come out. Next slide. Okay, the Protect grant program. So this is also one of those very long acronyms. Promoting resilient operations for transformative, efficient, and cost-saving transportation. So really, basically, it's a resiliency grant. So it's meant to fund projects that address the climate crisis by improving resiliency. So that could be highways, public transportation, ports, and it even lists intercity passenger rail. But selected projects should utilize innovative and collaborative approaches to risk reduction. And they do like to see it include the use of natural infrastructure. So strategies including conservation, restoration, or construction of riparian and streambed treatments and so forth. That is the goal of this particular grant program. Next slide. So that kind of concludes just the federal programs, discretionary grant programs that I wanted to highlight. And then I wanted to switch gears and kind of talk a little bit more about the CDOT grant programs that we administer. So I put in parentheses here federal funds just to let you know that in order to fund these grant programs, we're using federal funds. And because of that, obviously your compliance and transparency requirements must kind of follow 2 CFR 200 and all of the federal requirements. So this table, I think, is organized in the same way as the earlier table, although I have added direct contact information here in the table. So for each of these programs, we do have a contact internally that runs the program. And I tried to include either an email address or a phone number where you can contact those offices directly with any questions you might have. And that's, of course, not only through application, but through award and delivery and so forth. How you can see on the last item, transportation alternatives, I've written CDOT region contact. But at the end of the slide deck, I have a slide that shows you a state map of Colorado with the regions identified, and then also who the particular contacts are for each region so that you can kind of look at your area and identify what those contacts would be. I do have a slide for each of these, so I'll go ahead and go to the next slide and tell you a little bit about them. Okay, Safe Routes to School. So this actually used to be a federal program funded by directly by the federal government, but through some, sort of ongoing, as they introduce new legislation and new reauthorization bills, this actually ended up coming out of the federal list of programs. But we found so much value, and we really find this program important. So we decided to continue it and come up with some other federal funding that was more flexible that we could put towards it. So this is a program that is meant to just address basically safe routes to school. So walking and bicycling, around schools, pedestrian safety, congestion, air quality, those types of things. The projects are scored and selected in consultation with a nine-member Colorado Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee. And so any local county or municipality government or school district can apply for these funds. It does require a 20% local match, but in certain areas, there can be an option to reduce that all the way down to 0%. This last bullet point here where it says CDOT Federal Fund User Guide, each of these slides, I think, should have that link. So that links to a specific resource that my team has created on the Safe Routes to School program, and it has a lot of more detailed information about this program and kind of the mechanics around how we execute these awards. So take a look at that if you're interested in that particular program. Thanks. The Bridge Off System program is a really nice grant program we run to help fund some rehabilitation or replacement of bridges that are on not CDOT owned assets. So they do have to be on the eligible off-system bridges list. So it's not every bridge in the state. It is a limited list of bridges. But this funding can help with inspection, rehabilitation, and replacement of those bridges for counties and municipalities. These projects are selected by a special highway committee, and that's actually comprised of CML and CCI staff. And this program also requires a 20% match. Okay, next slide, please. At HSIP Highway Safety Improvement Program, this is another CDOT grant program. Obviously safety is our number one wildly important goal. So this is a really near and dear program to us. We try really hard to get these dollars out the door. So we love to see any applications for HSIP funding. The goal here is to achieve a significant reduction in fatalities and serious injuries on all public roadways. So it aligns with the Zero Death Initiative. And example projects include rumble strips, guardrail, intersection improvements, roundabouts, pedestrian crossings, anything that helps with safety. The IIJA added some flexibility, including protecting people outside of vehicles, such as people walking, biking, or using mobility assistive devices. This program does have very specific requirements when it comes to showing data around how safety is going to be improved. So you'll want to work really closely with CDOT to work on your application. But this only requires a 10% match because it's a safety program. And you'll want to work with your regional traffic groups on this particular grant. Next slide. Okay, transportation alternatives. So focusing here on bikes, pedestrians, non-motorized transportation projects, and also environmental mitigation. This particular grant program has a call for projects every 2 years for state-directed funds. So if you have any bike facilities, recreational trails, habitat connectivity projects, this is a good program to apply to. Requires a 20% match. We do often find that these projects pair with multimodal option funds, which can act as the match. So that works out pretty well. And that has a tiered match rate. So this is kind of a nice program for any bike or pedestrian projects you might have. Next slide. Okay. This is my third and final category. So I know the title of the webinar was IIJA, but I wanted to throw in some state grant programs because I think, like I mentioned on that last slide, it's really nice to have some state funds because sometimes you can use them as match. And also, I thought, these are kind of quite popular programs, and I think really have been really good things. And I just wanted to make sure we're sharing all the resources and information we have to kind of provide opportunities for funding for road and bridge. So there's the same kind of table that you're used to seeing now with contact and program information and hyperlinks. And with that, I will move on to the next slide. So first up, I just wanted to kind of mention the Multimodal Transportation and Mitigation Options Fund. I'm imagining that if you're a local government involved in transportation, you've most likely heard about this program or received these funds. But in any case, this particular program is obviously about multimodal transportation projects and operations throughout the state. So these funds are distributed by formula among the 15 different transportation planning regions in the state. And then the project funding is awarded within each region by its regional planning committee. So, if you're looking at this funding for projects, obviously working with your regional planning committee is important. So make sure you reach out and contact those people if you're trying to work in this area. Next slide. Revitalizing Main Streets is a program that actually was created at the start of COVID and initially started out providing funds to allow for kind of outdoor dining and social distancing and those types of things. But it turned out to be quite successful. So it's now an ongoing program that has ongoing funding that the department received through our Senate Bill 21260. And so there will continue to be calls for projects ongoing into the future for this program. And it's really meant to help communities across the state implement transportation-related projects that improve safety and yield long-term benefits to community main streets. I think the one thing I want to note on this is that even though it's called Revitalizing Main Streets, it's not it's not that only main streets are eligible. It sort of is meant to encompass sort of downtown street areas. So it doesn't have to be like a specific main street. So this grant program just funds improvements that support downtown vitality and the community access to public streets and multimodal transportation. All of your buses and bike and ped and things like that. So the next deadline to submit applications is actually in February. And we're hoping to get the updated application posted next month. Off-system projects are allowed on locally owned streets. So these funds go to roads that are used by people, whether in rural or urban areas. So that's Revitalizing Main Street. Next slide. All right, you can see the format of this slide is a little bit different because it's got a bunch of information, and I actually just got a lot of this information yesterday. The team, the Office of Innovative Mobility team has been working hard to kind of compile all of the documentation that we're needing for releasing the notice of funding opportunities and applications and all of that. And I think they're hoping to get that out the first or second week of January. So there's actually 4 grants coming out of the Office of Innovative Mobility, which kind of focus around reducing air pollution and reducing congestion on roads by expanding multimodal transportation options, and then also using traditional and emerging technologies. So these are some kind of unique grant programs. And I'll just kind of talk through them. I don't have individual slides on these, so I'll talk through them one at a time. And like right now, the website hasn't been updated, so I don't have hyperlinks because the team is working on all of the documentation. But I'm hopeful probably shortly after the holidays, the website should be updated and you should see links to kind of all of the information. So first grant program, transportation, demand management, innovation. So these are strategies to help travelers make more efficient use of existing infrastructure. I mean, we call it TDM. So project proposals have to meet at least one criteria for innovation. So they have to demonstrate a technology or approach that is new to the region, application, or audience, or expand a technology or approach from a limited pilot to a wider geography, application, or audience, or scale existing proven approaches, programs, or technologies to a regional or statewide scale through the use of partnerships. You can see in the third column there, I did want to give you an idea of the size of the grant program. So this has a minimum request of 20,000 and a maximum of 50,000. And it encourages a match, but the match is not required. So that's kind of nice. The second row you see here, Strategic Transportation Management Organization seed funding, TMO seed funding. The thought behind this grant is to promote the creation of new transportation management organizations in currently unrepresented areas of the state. So this funding is available for the creation of programs statewide that don't overlap with the service area boundaries of existing TMOs. And this particular program, the request minimum is 20,000, but can go up to 100,000. And it actually does require match. The next item, zero emission vehicle workforce development. So I think the purpose of this grant is to develop the skills and talent necessary to meet the changing demands of the transportation electrification sector. So we really are hoping to kind of address the multiple challenges that Colorado and the wider mobility and electrification industry are facing. So talent shortages, gaps in new skill sets, and the growing need for training to keep pace with technological advances. So if you have any needs in that area, that would be a great grant program. And that's between 20 and 100,000. And same, the 20% is encouraged but not required. And then finally, the last grant program here, e-mobility education and awareness. This is really to support grassroots organizations in hosting community events or developing culturally relevant materials and campaigns. Also to kind of increase zero emission vehicle knowledge within disproportionately impacted communities. There's also a hope of kind of delivering STEM education, including K-12 on ZEV technologies, benefits, and career opportunities, and then also to provide educational and awareness programs to inform the general public on the availability of different ZEV models, including e-bikes, or modes including e-bikes, e-scooters, transit, and so forth, and also the available incentives and programs to access them. So that is between $20,000 and $100,000. And I just to give you an idea of how much is available, the TDM innovation, we have 400,000 set aside statewide for that program. We have 200,000 set aside for the TMO seed funding, and then 750,000 each for those last two rows. And I will say the last round we went through, we actually didn't have enough. We didn't award out all of the dollars. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here if you're interested in these programs to be successful with your grant application. So, I just encourage you to keep an eye on our website and when the information comes out, to reach out to the Office of Innovative Mobility if you have more questions on this one. Okay, next slide. Colorado Discretionary Aviation Program. This is one we don't actually talk about all too often. We have an aeronautics division within CDOT. And they kind of do a great job of maintaining relationships directly with all of the public use airports throughout the state. But I wanted to kind of give you a complete overview of everything transportation. So I included a slide on this one. This is basically a grant program for aviation purposes. So hopefully your kind of airports in your area have a good relationship with Aeronautics Division and CDOT if they're interested in applying for any grants around maintaining and improving the aviation system. So, focused on airports and statewide aviation goals and needs. Next slide. I'll talk a little bit about our Faster Transit Grant Program. So this is a CDOT grant program. So we have $5 million set aside in, we call it Faster because that's the type of funding internally that we're using to fund this program. So $5 million in local transit grants that we award competitively. And this is administered through the CDOT regional offices. Local recipients are required to provide a minimum 20% local match. And just some example projects, purchase and replacement of transit vehicles, construction of multimodal stations, and acquisition of equipment for consolidated call centers. Let's see, next slide. Okay, I know that was a ton of information and I went pretty quickly, but I wanted to give you kind of a whole laundry list of grants available. And actually, it's not even the whole laundry list. It was just the ones that probably are more relevant at this moment. But this slide just goes over technical assistance, additional information. There's a lot of links here to USDOT, FHWA, if you're interested in all of the IIJA discretionary grant programs. Also included a link to transit grants. And then on the bottom, the CDOT local agency desk reference, which is an awesome guide for local agencies that are trying to deliver on projects. And then some federal aid essentials for local public agencies. So just a host of different resources here. Next slide. Here's what I had referred to earlier, which is a map showing you the CDOT regions. I know as state government, we like to split up Colorado into about 800 different region maps, but these are ours. These are the CDOT regions. And so you can see just based on where you're located, what your region contact would be. And that would be, if you're not already in contact with these people, this is a great way to really get started. Next slide. I also went ahead and included Federal Highway Administration contacts because quite a few of those FHWA grants are being administered directly. So the Safe Routes to School, but SS4A, with those SRTS and SS4A mixed up. But anyway, if you have interest in an FHWA grant, this would be your contact for your particular area. And then next slide. I guess that's it. So thank you, and I think we can dig into questions.
Great, thanks, Cheryl. Are you gonna run the questions or do you want me to jump in?
Yep, I am happy to.
Okay, good.
So yeah, we do have a couple questions for you, Bethany. The first question comes from the chat and it says, do any of the programs support the installation of EV charging stations? And if not, what are some options for this?
So I didn't include a slide about there's a new IIJA program that we're actually partnering with the Colorado Energy Office on, and they're kind of leading, I think, that program. So that's kind of why I didn't include a slide on it, but the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. So it's a new grant program that is meant to support the build out of a network of EV fast charging stations along federally designated priority corridors. And I just am not too close to kind of the applications and the cycle that's happening. I think it is, it's in partnership with the Colorado Energy Office. I do know that it typically requires a 20% match. And and that there's a wide sort of like eligibility, or not eligibility, but there's a wide array of entities that are able to turn in applications. So not only local governments and tribal governments, but private companies, nonprofits, and others. You might take a look and see if you can find more information online about that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Reed. I work with Bethany at CDOT. I just wanted to say that I work with federal discretionary grants, and so I did drop into the chat. Hopefully everyone can see that, a link to FHWA's overview on EV charging infrastructure grant programs. And so that includes some of the ones we heard about today that kind of have like a general eligibility to them, like RAISE and infra. But there's also the ATTAIN program, the CFI program, which is charging and fueling infrastructure, and some others in that document there.
Great. Thank you so much for that additional resource, Hannah. All right, so we have a couple more questions. Next, is the RCN grant, RCN grant eligible for partnerships with other state agencies?
Hi, I can answer that one again. So just to clarify, is that asking for like other states, like not Colorado, or other state departments in Colorado?
Christina, would you like to put your clarification in the chat?
I can also answer either way. It is a national program, so like there is other departments. Okay, got it. So non-state DOTs can apply. There is an eligibility contingency that the facility or asset owner must be obviously included and involved in the project itself. So if you're working with another like Colorado State Department, but the project is to do any sort of work on a CDOT owned asset, CDOT does still need to be involved in that. However, we don't need to be the recipient or even the lead applicant. We just have to have a partnership where we acknowledge and work with you that work will be done on our owned infrastructure.
Great, thank you. The next question, is there still matching on RMS?
Let's see, you're talking about the Revitalizing Main Streets program. I believe so, but I have to look into that. I'll have to find out more about that and get back to you.
And with that note, as a reminder, we will be sending out notes for this. So we'll include the slides, we'll include the recording, and then we also have a running question and answer log. So any of the questions that are asked during these calls are included in that log. And if there's ones that we can't answer live, we will track it down and add it to that. So stay tuned.
I can hop back in that. I pulled it up here. So the minimum match amount required is 10% of the total project cost for Revitalizing Main Street.
Great, thank you. That was a quick turnaround. All right, and then the next question, are any programs available to support railroad crossings?
Yes, definitely federal programs are available for railroad crossings. The FRA is taking their sweet time on releasing some of the typical federal rail opportunities we see this year. The last one we saw was the CIDP program over the summer, but CRISI, that's C-R-I-S-I, it's Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements, and the Railroad Crossing Elimination, RCE, both of those programs would be good opportunities to look at for any rail crossing projects.
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions in the Q&A or in the chat at this time. But one kind of last question I would like to ask either Bethany or Hannah, whoever feels most comfortable, but do you have any best practices that you recommend for applying for these programs, knowing that some folks might be applying for some of these federal funds for the first time? Is there anything that you would just kind of give as advice or guidance?
Yeah, for sure. I think we have a lot. We probably have a lot that we would talk about. I think best practices, we always encourage having match ready before applying, or make sure you're really confident about the cash flow. That'll help you be successful delivering. Um, we say that shovel ready, quote unquote, projects have the best chance to succeed and be delivered quickly. And I guess it's like, well, what do you mean by shovel ready? So if you have your right of way acquired and or cleared, if your design is already complete or will be completed soon, if your environmental clearance will be programmatic or cleared soon, these are really great things that make delivery, award and delivery so much better. We also say that, one of the big hurdles when it comes to grants is doing the intergovernmental agreement. And I think we're working really hard internally to do everything we can. We know that often delays are our responsibility on our side. So we actually have a couple of initiatives going on internally to make sure that we're doing a good job in improving and doing the best job we can to shorten the timeline for getting IGAs completed. But knowing that they are a big hurdle and take a long time to complete, starting them as soon as possible is a best practice. So immediately after the award, if we can get started on an IGA, that's great. So I also, starting with a $0 IGA and then executing option letters when appropriate, that works well for us. The other thing that we like to kind of talk about with best practices is just being really aware of authorization and end dates from federal highways. So on federal grants, just really tracking those and making sure that you're keeping your projects active by submitting kind of periodic billings. Like, don't wait till the end of a project to send an invoice. Regular invoicing is a really helpful and really good thing. So we kind of typically talk about some of those as far as best practices. And then, Anna, I don't know on your side as far as sort of grant application, if you have any thoughts. But
Yeah, definitely. Everything Bethany said, I agree with wholeheartedly. I mean, kind of to summarize as much as I can, take ownership of the grant program you're interested in as much as possible. And by that, I mean, just like do as much proactive research as you are able to when pursuing a federal grant opportunity. Attend all the webinars, read the NOFO for yourself, or find a credible summary, because these NOFOs can be massive, I understand. But there are little things that you don't realize are in there that are kind of buried within all this like jargon and confusing content in these huge NOFO booklets, but there's stuff that could really make or break your project. And don't be afraid to reach out to the federal grant program staff. They have designated contact for all of these individual grant programs that are overseen by dozens of people. And they're super responsive to email. And then you have that paper trail that you can keep referring to. They do have phone numbers if you'd rather just call. And they want to award this money, and they want to award it to the best project. So if you get in front of them and let them help you as much as they can, kind of tell you what it is they're looking for, that's a really easy way to make sure that you're submitting the best that you can. I would also, you don't have to wait. I would advise people not to wait to see a NOFO, a notice of funding opportunity, open before you kind of start on a grant. If you know that you're interested in RAISE and it hasn't opened for that fiscal year yet, you can look at previous year's NOFOs, and I can guarantee you they change a negligible amount year to year. It's very unlikely that they will change so dramatically that if you tailor an application or a draft to last year's notice of funding opportunity, that you'll have to redo everything once the current one drops. At most, you'll need to maybe adjust some of your like tone or some of your merit criteria priority or something like that. But you'll have a really good head start if you know you like that program and you can look at references that already exist.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you, both Hannah and Bethany, for this presentation today and answering all these great questions. I am not seeing any other additional questions, but if there are, we will be following up with the question and answer log. Otherwise, I will turn it back over to Chantal for some closing remarks.
Great. Again, we just are so proud of all of you, and thank you so much for attending these calls. And always let us know if you have other topics that you want us to bring to you, or immediate questions and answers. You can always reach out to your Dole Regional Manager and they will help you navigate. So thanks again, and we hope you have the wonderful holidays in the next couple weeks, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.